This video is going to wrap up this particular section of solving rational equations. This video is going to deal with more quadratics when we finally get to them, but we're going to actually involve extraneous solutions in this video. See, the last couple videos we didn't actually have any extraneous solutions, so we didn't really have to deal with them. This video we will have them. We'll talk about really what they are, how to kind of check for them, and kind of eliminate some of those values. So I'm not going to write the steps on the board because that would defeat the purpose of you taking notes, right? So you should have them written down, and so you should be referring to them if you need help. In this particular equation, again, I want to find the excluded values first. So what's the excluded value for each of these denominators? Our excluded value is p cannot be 0. If you remember, it's a monomial, it's always going to be 0. So now I need to make a common denominator with all of my denominators. But remember, we take monomials with the highest power. So p squared is our common denominator. Pretty simple there. So that means this p plus 1 stays, this 1 stays. This p minus 5 turns into a p squared minus 5p. How did I do that? I multiplied it by a p because I had to multiply the bottom by a p to get my p squared. So now I have that. That was my second step. Remember LCD. Third step, cross and solve. So I get p plus 1 equals 1 plus p squared minus 5p. Now let's bring all of these over. So 0 equals 1 minus 1 when I bring this over is 0. So p squared. Negative 5p, when I bring the p over, that gives me a negative 6p equals 0. Now I have a quadratic. Remember, we had 3 different methods we can use. The first is I can try to pull something out. What do they have in common? They have a p. What's left? A p minus 6 equals 0. What makes this p 0? 0. What makes that p 0? 6. So my two answers for the first method here was 0 and 6. Now let's go to the second method. Remember, that was the factoring using the x. So let's see if I can factor. So I get a 0 up top, a negative 6 there, negative 6, and a 0. Remember, I take these out and I flip them, and I divide by a, which is 1, 6, comma, 0. So those are my answers there. The third way, remember I said always works. Remember, so a is 1, b is negative 6, and c is 0. This is the quadratic formula. So it's negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac over 2a. Now let's fill it in. So the opposite of b is 6 plus or minus the square root of negative 6 squared minus 4 times 1 times 0. So because this is a 0, that makes all of that a 0. Divided by 2 times 1, which is 6 plus or minus the square root of 36 over 2, which is 6 plus or minus this. What's the square root of 36? Oh yeah, it's 6 over 2. So that is 6 plus 6 over 2 and 6 minus 6 over 2. So 6 plus 6 is 12 divided by 2. That gives me 6. 6 minus 6 is 0. 0 divided by 2 gives me 0. So my answers are the same, 6 and 0. Now, some of you are like, well, I didn't deal with extraneous solutions at all yet. All I did was show you the 3 methods and how you get the same answer. Again, you get to pick and choose what method you want. Now, here's where extraneous solutions come into play. My excluded value was 0. One of my solutions was 0. In each one of these, a 0 is in there. So what happens is, because those are the same, that means my actual answer is only the 6. The 0 is what we call extraneous. That means that is a solution you get when you solve, but it's not an actual solution you get when you were to plug it in. Because if I plugged in 0 to my denominators, I would get 0, and we all know you cannot divide by 0. That is why that is an extraneous solution. So in this particular example, p equals 6 is the only answer we get. The 0 is not an answer. Let's go ahead and do this particular problem. Same way as before. Just looks a little harder, but it's really not. So what I want to do is first I want to find excluded values. So before I do anything, that's already a 0 because it's just x by itself. But 4x squared minus 2x, I can pull out a 2x, and I'm left with a 2x minus 1 inside. Well, that 2x there is a 0 because it's a monomial. Well, what makes this particular binomial 0? 1/2. If I take the 2x minus 1 and I make it equal to 0, I add 1 and I divide. X equals 1/2. That's how I get the 1/2. And because this is the same, my excluded values, I have 2 of them. X cannot be 0 or 1/2. So that's the first step, finding excluded value. Second, LCD. I need to make sure my denominators are going to be all the same. From before, this was 2x times 2x minus 1. Same thing here, because it was the same denominator, I don't change it. And this one was just an x. So if I look at the monomial values, x, 2x, and 2x, I need to have a 2x in my new denominator. Then I need this binomial, 2x minus 1. So that also has to be in there. Now, my denominator is all the same. I need to multiply my numerators to reflect my new denominators. So in this particular fraction, this is really the only one that changes. Everything else stays the same. So what does that change? Well, I have an x in my fraction, my denominator, and I have an x in my denominator there. So that doesn't change. What else changes? It's the 2 and then the 2x minus 1. So it's this little 2 here and the 2x minus 1 there. That is what I need to multiply this x plus 1 by. So 2 times the 2x minus 1. So I really get 2 times 2x minus 1 times the x plus 1 that's already there. So that's your second step. Now common denominators are good, so now I can cross out them. And now let's go ahead and solve. So I have 2 times 2x minus 1 times the x plus 1 equals 1 minus x minus 3. Some of you might be asking, how do I get a negative x minus 3? Remember, this negative here gets distributed to both of those terms. So on the right side, I actually have negative 2 minus x. On the left-hand side, it kind of is a little weird because I have parentheses and stuff. So what I have to do is I'm going to take the binomials and I'm going to make a box. 2x minus 1, x plus 1, and make a box here. 2x squared minus x, 2x minus 1. So it's really 2 times 2x squared plus x minus 1, which I distribute the 2, gives me 4x squared plus 2x minus 2 equals negative 2 minus x. Then what do I actually do? Well, I'm going to bring this negative 2 over. I'm going to bring the negative x over. So I get 4x squared plus 3x, because I got to bring the x over by adding, equals 0. My 2's cancel because I'm adding the opposite, so I get a 0 every time. So this is the equation that I actually have to solve. The 4x squared plus 3x equals 0. And remember, there were 3 ways to do so. Or let me rephrase that. There were up to 3 ways to do so. You might not be able to do it every way, but there is the potential to be 3 ways. So the first way, I take the 4x squared minus 3x equals 0. Can I factor? Yes. Take out an x. I get 4x minus 3 equals 0. This x we know is going to be 0. And then the 4x minus 3, I equal it to 0. I add the 3 to both sides and divide by 4. X equals 3/4. So I have 2 values. I know my answers are going to be 0 and 3/4. So those are my answers. Now let's make sure the other methods check out. The second method is, remember, to try to factor using the x that you use for factoring. So 4x squared minus 3x equals 0. This gives me 0, -3, -3, and 0. I flip, divide by a, 3/4, comma, 0. So again, I get the same answers there. Now let's go to the third kind of method. Remember, this was the quadratic formula. I'm not going to write the quadratic formula. I'm just going to plug the numbers in. So because it's -b, that gives me 3 plus or minus the square root of -3 squared minus 4 times 0, because of c being 0, divided by 2 times 4. So I get 3 plus or minus the square root of 9. And then where'd I get everything else? This makes a big old 0. 4 times 4 times 0 is 0. It makes a big 0. Divide by 8. So I get 3 plus or minus 3. The square root of 9 is 3. That's where you get the 3 from. Divided by 8. So I get 3 plus or minus 3 over 8, which is then 3 plus 3 over 8, and 3 minus 3 over 8. 3 plus 3 is 6 over 8, which makes 3/4 after reducing. 3 minus 3 is 0 over 8, which makes a 0. So again, I get the same answer all three ways. But from before, we said if any of the excluded values match up with my solutions, they don't actually count. So the 0 in your solutions don't actually count. So x, in this instance, x equals 3/4 is the only valid solution. The 0 is not a valid solution. That is what we call an extraneous solution. Go ahead and pause the video for this particular problem, see what you can come up with, and then press play to see if you are right. First thing, I got to find excluded values. So I have to factor first. What can I factor out of 4p squared minus 6p? I can take out a 2p. I'm left with a 2p minus 3. Therefore, this is also the same because it's the same denominator. My denominator here is 1. Remember what I said earlier, if it doesn't have a variable, there is no excluded value part. So this here makes the 0, monomial, and this here is 3/2. How'd I get it? I added 3 to 0, and I divided by 2, so 3/2. So excluded values, p cannot be 0 or 3/2. So now we got to find common denominators between all three different fractions. My common denominator is going to be 2p times 2p minus 3. And the reason why it is because that's just a 1, so I can make that really anything I want to. So I'm going to make it the 2p times the 2p minus 3. So now let's work on our numerator parts. Because this is the same, that means p minus 3 has to be the same. This is the same, so that has to be a p plus 3. This was the only one that I changed. What did I multiply by? I multiplied by a 2p times 2p minus 3. That means my numerator is going to be 4p squared minus 6p, because I distributed this, and then I multiplied whatever that was by that 1, which gave me the 4p squared minus 6p. So that's step 2. Step 3, eliminate denominators. And let's rewrite what I got left. I got p minus 3 plus p plus 3 equals 4p squared minus 6p. That's what I have so far left right there. Now let's combine like terms. P plus p is 2p. Negative 3 plus 3 is 0, so those are gone. Equals 4p squared minus 6p. Bring the 2p over. I get 0 equals 4p squared minus 8p. Now let's figure out what I get for my values. First method, I can try to factor out. What can I factor? I can factor out a 4p. I'm left with a p minus 2 equals 0, right? Then this becomes the 0, and this becomes a positive 2. So my answers are 0 and 2. The second method, I can try to factor with an x. I get 0 on top, a negative 8 below, negative 8 and a 0. I take my numbers, I flip them, I divide by a, and I get 2 comma 0. I'm not going to show you the quadratic formula method because hopefully after this many problems you know that it also works. Okay? So answers are 2, 0 on both of them. Now, what do we know? We know that one of my answers matches one of my excluded values. Therefore, it's not an answer. So the only answer is P equals 2. That is the only answer for this problem.